Hey guys, hi everybody. So everyone, good to see you, Stephanie. Hi Olga. This is Jimmy. I had to give Timmy away. He was just causing a lot of problems. So this is Jimmy. It's a different dog. What do you think? Can I lift him up a bit so you can see? Looks a bit different, doesn't he? I must say, I'm still trying to get used to him. Okay, so I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. I think I got on at about 2 minutes past. I'm a little bit stressed out because I think that the power might be going out, although if the electricity entity sticks to its schedule, then it should be fine. So we'll see what happens. But there is a possibility that could happen. Hello, Loris. Hello, Git. Hello, Firefly. Let me just bring this up on the desktop. So on the agenda today, we're going to talk about the royals. I've prepared quite a lot of information. Who watched the entire interview? Hi Queen Moon from Ohio, Catherine Perez from California, Mary. Mandy says, okay, Yvonne Phillips, hello from Arizona, Kathy Belelo. So you watched the whole thing, okay? Catherine Perez, not me. Deborah Booth, Queen Moon says you watched the whole thing. Okay, so the whole thing is about 85 minutes, the whole interview. And we're gonna talk about that at length in this episode. So those who are into the royals will probably find it quite interesting. We're also going to talk about Sarah Everard and why I think it happened. And I quickly looked at some of the comments before going on. Someone was saying, there's no way you could know why now. I think it's possible that you can know, and I think it's also possible that you need a lot more information. So we'll see what turns out to be true. Mandy, this is a miniature schnauzer. I've been trying to just lift him up a little bit. Okay, his name's Timmy. He's actually he was shaved so close that he's still sort of licking himself. I think it feels like he's been sandpapered or something like that. Got a haircut, that's right, Jenny. Brenda, hello from Texas, hi there. Robin, Staffordshire, UK. Robbie, have you been keeping up on the Sarah Everard case? Mary says Timmy looks fabulous. Well, he's looking a bit like a whippet. It looks like he's suddenly gotten very long legs and lost a lot of weight. Sakura Girl says Timmy looks great. My dog used to act embarrassed when he got a haircut. Well, the funny thing is when he got home, the cat was very, very cautious and was sort of looking at him from a distance, just like what the F kind of thing, right? Like he smells sort of right, he just doesn't look right. And cats are quite visual creatures, so that is quite funny. Muffy Dragon Slayer, new to your channel, love your well done videos. Nurse Bev, love cats. Do you think cats are more destructive than dogs? I'm still trying to figure that one out. My carpets and my furniture are and my pot plants are seeming to be quite vulnerable to the cat, more so than to the dog. I think they have different things that they ruin or damage, I guess. Renee Baker says, I have cats out the frame. Okay. Had to get rid of my plants. I've had to fortify one particular palm that's just been targeted. So I've had to put boards around it, just trying to keep the thing safe. Someone says, Mo Bean says, no, cats aren't more destructive. You have to adapt, trying to adapt. Both brings, Sly Sonia says, both bring different things to the table, that's for sure. Okay, are you guys ready to get going? Hello from Texas, from IRO. No indoor plants, says Renee Baker. It depends on the cat, yeah. Hey, Tommy. Huh? Okay, I still feel quite bad about dropping him off where I did. It's a bit like Auschwitz. You sort of go in their cages. The first time I took him in, all the dogs were quiet and there was no noise, and Timmy was curious. The second time, when he heard the noise of the machines, I guess the shearers, he tried to back out of there. He really wasn't happy. Jacqueline Watt, hi from Scotland. Bria Lace, good to see you. Am I saying your name right, Bria? Nurse Bev says he's so handsome. I presume you're talking about Jimmy. I'm still trying to get used to him. It doesn't seem like Timmy. I'm convinced cats try on your footwear while you're sleeping. Okay. Okay, so I think, Timmy, we'll say hello to you a little bit later. Let's just... He's got his bed next to me here. So I've made a couple of notes, but before we get to that, I just want to quickly mention the video that I did on Chris Watts. I feel a little bit bad about. That's the difference between making a YouTube video and writing a book. When you write a book, everything's slowed down. You've got to check the details. I use a lot of hyperlinks, so I feel a bit embarrassed that I didn't check Netflix's information. And someone quite quickly pointed out that the hotel where you see Shanann on her phone isn't the right hotel. It's actually a hotel in Las Vegas. This particular commenter first said it was the Wyndham, and then I checked the Wyndham and it wasn't that hotel. But I quickly saw that it definitely wasn't the hotel in Arizona. And anyway, it turned out to be the Wynn in Las Vegas. But if you just think about that as kind of an example. So anyway, I apologize for the error. But what I want to just bring up is, if you think about that as an example, I know when I saw those pictures of Shanann, I thought, wow, she really looks great. She really looks happy. She really looks healthy. And what was going on in the phone data review just seemed distant. It didn't even seem applicable. And that intuition turned out to be true, because she wasn't even pregnant at the time. She definitely wasn't ill at the time, not to the extent that she was in Arizona. One wonders, where are the photos from Arizona? You know, you would think you go to you go to a Thrive event, aren't you going to promote it? So isn't there a lot of footage of Shanann in Arizona? There is, I think, one photo of a few ladies sitting at a table that I think is the genuine photo from Arizona. And then there are a couple of others, I think, in the audience. And I think the photo where Shanann is 15 weeks pregnant with the grapefruit, that I think is also from Arizona. But anyway, I apologize for the error. Stephanie says, you owned it right away, and when you were writing Post-Truth, you mentioned how good she looked in those pics. Yeah, it definitely seemed odd. It's actually quite sad if you look at how happy, genuinely happy Shanann looks there, and she really looks the picture of health from February to where things eventually were in July and August. I think Nutgate happened because Shanann maybe didn't realize it, but she was being undermined. Something was happening that she wasn't aware of. Jay Fraser says, hit the like button. Make sure you do. Okay, so some people want to talk about Nicole Kessinger. We're not really going to talk about that just yet. Okay, so something I just want to also mention before we get to the royals. I found a nest, a spider's nest about the size of my fist in my garden. Not today, I've actually seen it for a while, but I photographed it for the first time today. I think I put the picture on Instagram, and then I just read up about it because I think that's a rain spider's nest, and then I went to check up on it, and it was, and I just read up a little bit about it, and apparently they did an experiment to check whether the rain spider is poisonous, and they had it bite the nose of a guinea pig, and something like within 7 minutes the guinea pig died. And so they thought the rain spider was poisonous. It turned out the guinea pig had died of shock. And I can tell you, as a giant human being compared to those really big spiders, they are very, very scary. They've sort of got a banded appearance, black and yellow, and they're often as big as your hand, these spiders. And they kind of have an attitude. Sometimes when you approach them, they will rise up on their back legs and lift their front legs, and they don't want to move. Sometimes they can. Anyway, there's a long thing to say about that. But the interesting thing is they say the spiders are quite protective of their nests for the 3 weeks that it takes for the baby spiders to come out. And obviously hundreds of them do come out. And so they say that's often when gardeners get bitten, is during this period. I see a lot of you are, someone says, sick of Harry and Meghan, who cares? If you want to see what I'm talking about, go to Google rain spider or go to the Wikipedia page. You can see the nest there. You can also see what these spiders look like. They are pretty damn scary. They actually also eat lizards. When I was taking a photo of the nest, I actually saw 4 lizards in the frame of the picture. So I think that was quite a good spot the spider chose to make the nest. Interestingly, part of the nest is snail shell. So, okay, I think, is everybody here? I see there are about 200 of you watching. I think we can maybe get started. So, does anyone know, by the way, for those who really hate the royal family, hate talking about it, you might want to skip the next half hour because we're going to be talking about Meghan and Harry. I'm going to be sharing some of my personal sort of experience, not that it's absolutely direct, but you might find it quite interesting. What I can tell you is some of my best friends bumped into Harry in Lesotho. That's a mountain kingdom, sort of a landlocked mountain kingdom. And he has often gone there to do charity work, and they actually bumped into each other. And I guess I didn't believe them when they told me. I said, yeah, right, kind of thing. And then they showed me photos of him looking very informal, kind of just sitting around the fire with them, barbecuing, and just being himself, and just, I think, enjoying being away from I think if you want to get away from the hubbub and the hype and the tabloid journalists and the paparazzi, I don't think you could do better than Lesotho. It's just really far away from all of that. It's a mountain kingdom. It's pretty not much of, very low population there. Namibia is the same. Yari's Timmy's seems like he wants to be the star. Timmy, hey. Okay, so the interesting thing is these friends of mine have now gone to Wales, so they're living in Wales. But it is interesting how one of the options that Harry and Meghan were thinking of was coming to South Africa, and then they chose Canada. I think they were also thinking of probably Australia. So coming back to the interview, does anyone know whose home the interview was done at? Because what I found pretty incredible is that I kind of had the feeling Harry doesn't really have a job in the normal sense. You know, he's given up his title, so he doesn't really have a job, yet they can still live next door to Oprah. That's not bad. That's not bad for a youngish dude. We're going to give up our title. Well, let's go and live next door, not directly next door, but in the same road as Oprah. Pretty amazing. Renee says Gail King. I can actually believe that. Okay, so it was at Gail King's house. She's 40 years old, okay? Some people getting quite upset here. We'll be dealing with Chris Watts questions in a moment. I just want to go through this interview. So I must tell you that I haven't really been very interested in the royals. I think I meant to watch the wedding. I don't think I ever did. I did pay attention to the celebrities that attended, like Beckham and George Clooney, and I sort of noticed that, but I never really paid attention to the wedding. But I did watch this interview, so I think I can give you a kind of a non-biased assessment of it. I've seen some channels have done a lie detector thing, body language thing, which I just find, I can understand it because everyone is trying to get their pound of flesh, but I find it a bit inappropriate. It's just, in a way, a couple talking about what's going on. I don't know why there needs to be an inquisition, but so it's quite interesting. Although they've sort of given up their title, they're certainly not living in the sticks. It's not like riches to rags kind of thing. It's definitely still riches. Why do you think they didn't go straight to California? Why do you think they went via Canada? I think that one possible reason is that they wanted to. Canada's sort of a harder to reach country than the USA. So I kind of get the feeling that they were trying to get away from it all. Do you guys agree with that? So Laura says, I watched the behavior panel. What did they say about it? Were they sort of trying to find out what was true and what wasn't true? Renee says Diana left him 7 million. Okay, so that actually makes sense. Mandy says Meghan seems genuine. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I was watching this, and in a way, for the first time, I was really paying attention to her, and I was feeling a sense that I hear your story, but I'm struggling to make a connection with you. I'm struggling to connect with you as a person. That's just how I felt. And I kind of got the same feeling with Oprah. I got the feeling that Oprah was trying to be sympathetic, but also that Oprah didn't seem completely convinced about certain things. Now, I think what you've got to acknowledge is when Oprah says you can ask any question, she also interviewed Lance Armstrong. She said the same thing there. It's not really true. There were a couple of instances where they didn't answer, and she was asked, can you say the person's name, and wouldn't say anything, right? So Mandy says you should watch the channel Observe. He did a body analysis on her. I saw that. I didn't watch the analysis, but I saw that, and I thought, I don't know if that's appropriate. I can see why there's an audience for that, but I don't know how you would feel. I don't know how I would feel if someone did a body language analysis of me doing this video saying, well, I think he's telling a lie there about a spider, and I think blah, 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 blah. I think there's a difference between doing that in true crime. I can acknowledge doing it with a politician, but I don't know whether any person is fair game. I don't think there's anything wrong with, you might have a friend or someone where you sort of wonder, that kind of thing, but to put someone up onto YouTube where you do that, I find it a little bit distasteful, just personally. I can understand why an audience can find it entertaining, but I don't know, I think that's just where I come from. But having said that, I did look at the interview, and I kind of want to talk to you about how my feelings changed a bit through the interview. So as I say, I was trying to connect with Meghan, and I kind of felt that I wasn't having that connection in the beginning, and I think part of it is because there are legal issues. You can't actually name names. You can't mention specific things because you would be in legal trouble if you did that. If you make an accusation, you will immediately have a lawsuit, and then you'll be in a world of trouble. Mandy says, I respect that, but he makes it clear it's only 85% accurate because a lot can vary depending on the person. That's fair, Mandy, but the thing is, I have watched this channel. I don't really want to talk about other channels at all, but this particular channel did a thing on Burke Ramsey, and I would say I disagreed with easily 80 to 90% of it. So I think we've got to be careful looking at a person we don't know, and this is exactly what I was doing, and making assessments that seem like gospel to 500,000 people. I think that channel's got 10 times as many subscribers as I do, and so he's influencing them with potentially his own bias. And is that helpful? I don't know. Isn't it teaching people to be judgmental and to be superficial? I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Mystery Baker says absolutely. Okay, thanks, Mandy. It's just my view, but you must remember, I'm definitely not the typical royal watcher. So what I can tell you is, there's one member of the royal family that I was interested in, and it was Diana. I can tell you, when I was a little boy, I think I was maybe 11 years old, somewhere around there. We went to school that day, and then they actually put the royal wedding on the television. The teacher that had us put the wedding on television, and then we were allowed to watch the entire wedding. So in other words, as the alarms went for the different classes, they sort of just allowed us to just stay in that class and watch the wedding the entire day, which the rest of the school or the rest of the class didn't get to do. And so obviously at that age, it did seem like a fairy tale. Halfrighter says, I couldn't care less about the royals. I sort of feel that way now. But what is interesting in the Oprah interview was the word fairy tale came up about 3 times in the beginning. You heard it from Meghan, I think. You heard it from Oprah, and then you also heard it from a sort of a news clip talking about it. And what I found very interesting, because I've been talking about it in other cases, is the juxtaposition of fairy tale, fairy tale, fairy tale, and then the reality. And Meghan herself uses the word authentic over and over again, and real being real, and I don't know, that kind of thing. So you get that sense of the fairy tale and reality bumping against each other. And if anything, that is, I think, a lesson that is useful for the youth of the world today to be aware of, that life isn't a fairy tale, and don't be naive. Have hope, be positive, not toxic positivity, but be positive, but be realistic and be practical. So Sakura Girl says, we were on a dig on Maui when Diana got married. We got the day off to watch the wedding. That's interesting. When you say a dig, do you mean archaeological dig? A space D says, Diana was a real person, not fake at all. Jay Fraser, I was living in Argentina when she got killed. So I was in England. I lived for quite a while in Maidenhead, which is a stone's throw from Windsor, which is where probably the most beautiful royal palace is. So I actually did a triathlon in Windsor on the morning of Diana's death. And I just remember us all standing there, all the athletes ready to race, and then the race director telling us, guys, just be safe, just be careful on the roads, riding, cycling, because Diana's been in a serious car accident. And I don't know if they knew for certain then, but it was like, it looks like she didn't survive. And so it was weird being kind of at Windsor with the castle right there, and then hearing this story, and then having to do this incredible physical effort with that as the background. And then, it also just, did I spell it Everhard? Okay. Oh, damn, sure. Sorry about that. I see I've spelled Sarah's name wrong in this video. Sorry about that. I got it right in the original video, but yeah, I made another spelling mistake that I corrected in this video, but sorry about that. So just another thing about Diana, I actually had a dream about Diana. I think it was before she died. I had a dream about Diana, and I think it's the first person I ever dreamt about that I'd never met in my life. So I think that might give you an idea of how much media, there was so much media on Diana that to some extent you might have seen her more than certain people close to you, like a cousin or whatever. But I remember that quite well. Even now, many years later, I remember it was just a simple thing. We were at a party and Diana was there, and there was just a moment where I think she turned and looked at me and smiled, and that was it. But there was kind of a feeling of, whatever you want to call it, validation, acknowledgement. I don't know, it was just a strange moment, but I've never forgotten it. I have since dreamt of other, not that I do it often, I certainly don't do it every night or every year, but I think I've dreamt of a couple of criminals, probably because I've been thinking about them all the time. I've certainly dreamt of Amanda Knox, not happy dreams, quite disturbing dreams. Also Oscar Pistorius, same thing. But it did make an impression on me that I had a dream about Diana. Have any of you dreamt about her? Nancy Drew, interesting name. They didn't get outright money for the interview, but Oprah had previously highlighted Meghan's company, and this was like an advertisement for their network. Yeah, I do think it ended up being like an advertisement. I was under the impression they got paid 7 million, but I think that was what Oprah got paid. Yes, Christopher, that's a great point. I read something, you only dream of people you have met. So that is why that dream was so unusual, definitely. Okay, so apparently 2 billion people watched the wedding. So that was something that happened in the beginning of the intro with Oprah. She was just, you sort of have the whole spiel. These quite incredible photos. It's picture perfect. It's quite visually stunning. The whole thing feels a bit like a fairy tale. And Oprah says, sort of voiceover, 2 billion people tuned in to watch this, which I imagine is more people watched Meghan and Harry getting married than watched the moon landing. But if you think about that, if you compare that, the moon landing and just two people getting married, and then the next thing they are out of the whole system, not that long after that. One thing that I think was missing from Mo Bean says, I saw the wedding, that was stunning. In spite of, because of says, oh, the pageantry, absolutely. You know, the whole royal thing is pageantry. And I think my feelings about it have changed since I've studied true crime and I've studied the, to some extent, ruinous impact of pageantry. I don't think pageantry, there's anything wrong with pageantry per se, but pageantry for pageantry's sake and pageantry constantly is not good. It is keeping up appearances and then becoming a slave to appearances, which is, I think, something that Meghan herself talks about. Harry talks about being trapped, and it's trapped in this kind of appearance thing. And it's a game that they play with the media. So it did look like a fairy tale. It was, I don't know, I found Diana's wedding hard to top. I found that pretty, Diana looked really incredible. Charles looked fairly handsome at that time. That's a pretty impressive spectacle. And then look at what happened. So I do think it's important to look at that fairy tale moment, and then look at the reality. And then you must say, does the fairy tale keep you in its thrall? And maybe that's why fairy tales aren't good, because you keep wanting to be the fairy. You want to convince other people of a fairy tale. You want to live a lie, essentially. In spite of, because of, says Diana is and always will be a princess. Okay, so something I just want to quickly add, just a note that I made quite a few notes, and this is kind of a random note, but just on the subject of Oprah, probably about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more, someone I know, I wouldn't really call this person a friend, but just someone that I know, was a hotel worker, or she was studying hotel management or something, and so she had to work in a hotel as part of her studies. So I guess she was a student, and apparently they saw Oprah. I can't remember if she was in the corridor of this hotel. This is in South Africa, or in a hotel room or whatever it was. But apparently they said she looked totally different. She wasn't wearing a wig, and she wasn't wearing makeup. So I guess the reason I'm bringing it up is, if you just imagine the scenario of the pageantry, and then this person who's wearing a wig talking about how were things really. I find it a little bit, I mean, I love Oprah. I basically, in those days that Oprah was on television every single day, I sort of feel like I grew up with Oprah. But I think I had the same, not hero worship, but the same sense of Dr. Phil, of these sort of almost investigative journalists doing their thing, but then they become part of the system, if you know what I mean. They become part of the, I don't know, I'm not quite sure how to put it. So I've just made a couple of notes about them being neighbors. What did you guys think about, so now we're getting kind of into the meat of it. What did you guys think about Meghan saying, thank God I was ignorant about the whole thing? What did you think about her saying that she didn't Google Harry? And I kind of got the impression Oprah was either trying to catch her out or just trying to maybe get a soundbite there. Basically, didn't you Google the royal family before you got to know Harry, kind of thing, which I think a lot of people would have done. So Stephanie says, of course she Googled Harry. 12-Step Woman says, lied, LOL. So I guess that's how I don't have a horse in the race. When she said she didn't Google him, I guess I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Now, there was a point later on where she said, I think she didn't Google curtsying because she was in the limo, or she was in a car. But I think she did Google something else. Can't quite remember what it was. But this is my point, is, and it's just a question, I don't know what the answer is. If it's true that Meghan didn't Google the royal family, and there would be nothing wrong if she did do it, but if it's true that she didn't, then why would the media particularly bother her and them as quickly as it did if they weren't really online? And you definitely get people like that. You get people who aren't on social media, you get people who aren't on Facebook. They tend sometimes to be older people, but they can also be busy people. And so that is possible. It's just quite unlikely because it's so quick and easy to Google. So on a simple question like that, although in the beginning I accepted what she said, because it sort of made sense. She said, I didn't need to find anything out. I found it out directly from Harry. But then there's a question a little bit later on, and it was really highlighted by Jimmy Kimmel, I think, who said, you never watched a full series of The Crown. And I thought that was quite astute of him. I thought he's plugging into the human psychology there. And why on earth wouldn't they watch the whole thing? So I found that quite, when I saw that, I thought, that's not sure if I totally agree. This is when Harry came into the interview. So bear in mind, you had just Meghan and Oprah, and then Harry came in later on, right? So I wanted to really leave this for the end of what I'm talking about. I'm only really about halfway, but what I found was when Meghan was sitting opposite Oprah, I didn't feel much of a connection with her. She was talking about some things that sounded quite traumatic and heartbreaking, but I didn't see or feel the emotion on her face. And I was just thinking before I came on the live, just thinking if she was very emotional and crying, she'd probably be criticized for that, right? And I get criticized, maybe I'm not smiling enough on my lives or whatever. I think some people you put up a certain amount of armor or protection when you are exposed. You're not 100% how you want to be. But I kind of got the impression that she was guarded, but can you blame her? Can you blame her for that being the case? Especially what she revealed about, her feelings. But what I want to say is when they went out of that interview scenario and they were in the chicken coop, that's really where I thought, I sort of looked at it and I thought, wow, there was something genuine there. You saw her laughing, you saw her natural, and that's where I got a sense for the first time of her being likable. And I thought maybe the problem here is that Meghan's not I don't know how to put it, not transparent, but just not natural enough in front of the camera in terms of in other words, if she wants to cry on camera, or not wants to cry, if she's feeling tearful, cry. People maybe want to see those feelings, want to, I mean, I know there was a point where she was talking and I was like, wow, what you're saying is really hectic. But then she wasn't actually showing any emotions, and the very next thing she was. But then you kind of got the sense that it was being edited out, or that it was being, so that I think is also quite important to bear in mind, is there were edits, there were takes, and so that can give you a chance to recover yourself, right? But just in a practical sense, if you say something like, you can ask anything, well, can you imagine if Oprah started off with, let's start talking about your uncle, Andrew. Do you think the interview would have lasted very long, kind of thing? Olivia Vaz says, everyone Googles potential interests simply out of curiosity. Samantha says, the shock on Oprah's face when Harry disclosed that Charles wasn't accepting their calls, but nothing said about Meghan's dad. Okay. So I can tell you I'm not particularly interested in Charles or the Queen or even Andrew. I just sort of find the whole thing, I don't know, I find them, there's a lot of pomp and ceremony, but I find the whole thing dull just because they don't seem like real people. And I think that is actually the case, is I think what you're seeing isn't real, and that's something Harry was saying. So, even Harry's brother, that was something that I thought was quite interesting, is that Harry and his brother, there's a bit of a schism there, in the same way that there seems to be a bit of something going on between Kate and Meghan. But I think you can kind of understand it in the sense of, I mean, it made me think of my own family. It made me think of, I'm not getting along that well with my brother. And it's just how things go sometimes. And then you do have a situation where family choose sides and all that kind of thing, and it's sad and it's grim, but it does happen. Yes, Mary Rose says, I don't think she asked anything about Andrew. Judy says, just missed that. Snorky Lou, wow, these comments are coming in quickly now. Samantha Mustard, Meghan stated that they are prepared to lie for someone else, but again, Oprah didn't carry on. Andrew, ? Yes. They bring in money for England. That's true. I think money is definitely a factor. So what was quite interesting there was that they weren't getting security. They were talking about that. I can tell you that resonated with me. So when Harry was talking and he mentioned that he was quite factual and quite specific, and I thought, wow, I can understand that. And he was basically talking about, I think the Daily Mail published their address in Canada, and they were quite shocked and frightened and alarmed by that. Now, having said that, I think any high-profile person, it's quite difficult to keep some information like that private, but in any event, that was what they were sitting with. And I had that and I have that to some extent because I write about true crime. I've written about South African criminals, high-profile criminals like Oscar Pistorius and Henry van Breda, and I've been contacted by certain people, and there are also other criminals that I've sometimes commented on, and I've definitely felt vulnerable. So I can understand that sense of not wanting to, and I'm far more, I mean, it's a joke, I'm far more low profile than they are. I'm just saying that's a very legitimate concern. And my heart kind of went out to them on that. But then at the same time, if you really want privacy, then you don't go into Oprah. and you don't put up pictures of your family running on the beach kind of thing. You just stay out of the limelight. I mean, it's quite easy to do that if you really want to. Does that make sense? Gen H is absolutely, but bear in mind there's kind of a strange negotiation that goes on. You work with the media and then you make money, and so that is basically what is happening. And there's some media that are friendly towards him and some that aren't. In spite of, because of lots of comments that don't support their actions. So one thing that I did think was interesting, and that I think certainly, reinforces the sense that, no, I don't think it's rocket science to say, I think their safety and security is a legitimate concern, especially for their children. I don't think that's rocket science. But there was a point where Oprah asked, she's now getting a scoop, she's getting the exclusive, what is the gender? There's like a gender reveal before the gender reveal of, so bear in mind, Meghan was pregnant when she gave the interview. And so Oprah wants to know the gender. And so there's a sort of a little bit of like little pageantry going on where Harry's now going to come on and say what the gender is. And this is sort of a big moment in the interview. When Meghan is asked the due date, I think she just said summer. Now, I think if she was really wanting, in a sort of a predatory way, in a greedy way, publicity, she would have given the due date, but she doesn't want to do that. There were also quite a few occasions where she could have mentioned names and she didn't do that, but I think you've got to remember the legal quandary there would be, and if that happens, and I don't know if people appreciate that. I appreciate that. I talk about certain cases that are actually a minefield, and you can't be as absolutely transparent as you want to be just because it's not safe to do so. And I don't know if people give them the benefit of that when, in that sense, is that you can't be completely honest because of legal issues. You want to be completely honest, but you can't be because your hands are tied in a sort of a legal sense, right? And I think you've got to give them cut them a little bit of slack because of that. So I do remember where Oprah asked something. I just don't have the information at the top of my head now. I think it was, what does it have to do with pride or vanity? Sorry, I'm just trying to read my own notes here. Pepe, thank you very much. You so appreciate your content. Thanks a lot. Anyway, there was a point where Meghan answered the latter in the interview. I'm just trying to think what the thing was. I can't quite remember. I don't know if you can remember it. But anyway, she was choosing her words like that because of legal sensitivity, not because she's cagey and not because of something like that. I did notice something that, and you could notice the same about me. If someone puts up a comment here and my face darkens, you might say, wow, I think there's another side to this guy. I think he can get angry. Yes, of course. Anyone can. Everyone can. So it's not, we're all human beings here. So where Meghan says, it was just the reactionary way she did it. Now, bear in mind, she's on television, she's putting on her best face, and she says something to Oprah like, it's the tone of her voice. I don't know whether that Observe channel spoke about it, but she says, what does it have to do about pride or vanity? That to me was quite an authentic moment for me from her, where you kind of got a sense that Meghan can be quite feisty. I think Meghan can be quite, that's part of kind of the real Meghan, if I can put it that way. But I mean, that's true of any of us. But what I'm trying to say is, so you could have a situation where Meghan is more sensitive than usual. How can I put this in a proper way? I'm not quite sure how to say this without getting into trouble, but let me just say it. That Meghan might be more sensitive than someone else to the same criticism. So, and maybe that's not fair even to say that. And what I mean is, so, you might have, let's say Charles and Diana, and they criticized in different ways. Is Diana anorexic, this or that, right? But with Meghan, you've got that added dimension of the race side. And isn't it just the same thing? So it's the same, the tabloids just looking for something that they can make a meal of, right? And so with Meghan, it's just that is another element of it. But now it suddenly becomes very big because of the cultural time we're in or whatever. You might say I'm being insensitive to it, but my cousin, she actually passed away. Her name's Samantha. Her name was Samantha. Well, I suppose her name still is Samantha. But she passed away from coronavirus. Thanks, Olivia. Thanks a lot. Sorry, we're on a bit of a unhappy point at this point. I'll get back to you in a moment, Olivia. But anyway, Samantha, I was actually quite close to her. I think of my family, I was probably the closest to her. And it actually struck me watching the interview. She was like a redhead, but like really like red hair, very white skin, blue eyes, freckles, the whole thing. And she married a black guy, right? So very white girl, a redhead, very, very white, and she married a black guy. And so in a weird way, I thought, wow, because Harry is also is like a redhead, right? And so there was also a sense from our family, like, well, we wonder what their children are going to look like. I don't know if there's anything racist about that. I don't know if there's anything racist, because I think even normal people, you sort of wonder what, when I say normal people, I mean like just a normal couple. I guess I'm going to get into trouble for saying that, but I just mean someone who is of the same, normal situation, I guess is the proper way to say it. You're going to have a situation where you say, well, which child is the one going to take after, right? And in this situation, which I guess you could say is unusual in my family, we were curious. We were like, I wonder what's going to happen. And you had the situation where the children were actually born white, even though their dad is really dark. I mean, if you had to see him, you would. And so that was actually kind of a shock. And you sort of wonder how he feels about that, right? And recently I just watched Me, Myself and Irene, and it's kind of made a joke of where the character played by Jim Carrey has children. Well, actually, it's not his children, but his wife gives birth to 3 children, and they're all obviously not his children, but he sort of holds it within. The public are all gossiping about it, but he holds it in. Then he becomes schizophrenic. I'm just saying, racism is such a loaded thing. And some of it's just normal. I mean, I went for a walk with my dog, and someone with a Rottweiler that my dog has kind of got a crush on said, I wonder what the puppies will look like. Is there something weird about that? So, in Oprah's response, I kind of got the feeling there's almost like a slight smile on her face, Oprah's face, where she kind of goes, what? So it's, she's trying to dramatize something and get the full value of it, but is it really so crazy? Having said that, I wouldn't be surprised if that aspect was nevertheless present in the royal family. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, but I don't know. I don't know if it's this big deal that it's being made out to be, because Meghan herself said how welcoming the family were. You know, the Queen was so nice to her and so on. So I don't get the sense that I get the sense that there's a lot of traction that comes out of it, but I don't know if I get the sense that it's as real a deal as people are making it out to be. I think a lot of people are projecting their own indignation, as always happens. People are projecting their own indignation into the thing. There's a scene, I can't quite remember where I saw it. It may have been Jimmy Kimmel, where you just see Oprah's reactions, and I thought that was quite funny, where you just see her kind of going like this and then like that and what and this and that and the next thing, and you know, it seemed a bit over dramatic as far as I'm concerned. Jay Fraser, Harry is quite removed from Succession now, yeah. Mandy C, during high school in biology class, there's a formula to find out what your baby will look like. It's really accurate. Interesting. Kathy, Charles was annoyed Harry had red hair. So I don't know what you guys think. There are a lot of women here. You know, I think a lot of the women here look at the other woman and look at how Kate dresses and how Kate responds and how Kate carries herself. And then I guess you compare how Meghan does those things. In a weird way, I guess I look at the men and I look at Charles and, you know, William and Harry, and to me, the men in the story are not much to look at. I mean, do you guys think Harry is a good-looking dude? And I don't mean to be unkind or superficial. To me, it's just kind of obvious in the sense of, you know, if Harry was a normal guy, like not a royal, do you think there'd be a lot of attention paid to him in a general sense? You know, everyone here saying no, average. Someone says he's okay looking. Someone else says not for me, and so on. And yeah, I mean, so you've got these guys, and they dressed up beautifully, immaculately. You know, their clothing is incredible. The backdrop is incredible, and yet you know, and they're a prince and whatever. But you know, I don't know. It's just it's so strange how the pageantry works. It's sort of. I'm not saying if you're not a good-looking person that you're a bad person. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is, doesn't there seem to be a link between how horrible it is to be in the system? You know, Harry doesn't seem to think it's really worth being in. And then the idea that some of the royals are horrible people. That's the impression you get through some channels. And then some of the people don't really look very, is the word appetizing? Do you get what I'm saying? So they, within a system that's not very attractive, when you get to know it, when you're inside that system, but then the people themselves aren't particularly attractive either. So then you've got to say, what is the attraction then? Isn't the attraction the fairy tale? Beyond that, nothing. So basically the whole thing that is attractive is the idea, and also the idea of someone. So let me put it another way. If Harry wasn't a royal, do you think Meghan would be with him? And I think that's an unfair question, because he is a royal, right? I also think you could say to someone, well, if you're not rich, do you think that person would be with you? But you are rich, which means you there is something that is reality. So I think we've got to be practical. I'm just saying there is another way of looking at these things. Queen Moon, okay, well that's a comment responding to somebody else. Naughty says, your voice is attractive. Okay, well, not everyone agrees. Some people find it irritating. So, point number 16 I've made here was I think it was Meghan who said this, that she said, it's nothing what it looks like. Talking about the royal, okay, Jimmy, come. So she's talking about the royal family. She says it's nothing what it looks like. So I don't think you can blame her for saying or for getting the sense of, but it looks so good. It looks, I want to be part of that fairy tale, and then finding out it's not a fairy tale. I don't think you can blame her, but I think it's time that we try and start growing up as culturally and as people, that fairy tales are fairy tales, and at a certain point you must become an adult and realize that's going on, that there are appearances in this world and they're not good for us. Keeping up appearances isn't good for you. We've seen that with Sinead Watts, right? She also was saying that they kept asking her, how will it look? So, if I go and get counseling for mental health, how's that going to look? That was their concern, right? You kind of had the same thing with Sinead Watts. How's it going to look if I get divorced? And Chris Watts felt the same way. How's it going to look if I get divorced? How is this going to play out? You're going to be worried about how things look when you've been building your entire life, or you base your entire thing on how it looks. So you want to be part of this fairy tale because of how it looks. Then when you're in that fairy tale, you can't do certain things because of how it looks. You see the conundrum. I just want to get back to Olivia Vars for your contribution. Sorry, I was talking about something quite painful. And I just want to say thank you for your contribution there. I sort of passed it over as we went to it. Vincina says they got private deals. Harry and Meghan, other royals are just vampires of society. So I must say, whatever I wouldn't even say I've got criticisms of Harry and Meghan. I don't know them well enough to sort of go, I disapprove of this or that. But whatever, I guess, my reservations are of them, they seem to me the most genuine of all the royals, and that's something I give them credit for. So, well, we're already past the hour mark and we're still talking about the royals. Something that I've definitely found, Gen H, woohoo, I like that animation. Cool, thanks a lot. Someone on Patreon actually said that they want to design stickers. I think we talked about having them Schnauzer themed, so we'll see if that happens. So something that I find happens a lot in South Africa, and I must say, I think it's where angels fear to tread. I think if you're South African, especially a white South African, you're talking about anything with a racial message, then I think it's kind of where angels fear to tread. Because I think if you live in South Africa, I think that dimension is very different to the rest of the world. I'm not saying it's totally different, just at a different level. My experience in South Africa is, what happens a lot in South Africa is, I didn't get what I want, it must be racism. I didn't get what I should have gotten, the reason must be racism. And it's difficult to know what to make of that. So you could have a white person in South Africa saying, I didn't get the job I deserved, I didn't get this, I didn't get that, it's because of racism. But you can also equally get black people here saying, I didn't get a job, I didn't get what I wanted, it must be racism. And I think what happens a lot is life happens in South Africa, life happens, and then the real reason that it's happening, I'm not saying racism has zero part of it, just that it doesn't have such a huge part of it all the time. Heather West, thank you very much. I like your avatar there, the flowers. 12-step champion, also a superhero pair, thanks. Thank you very much. Just that, I'll give an example, I'll give myself as an example. I studied for some time in an area where what was supposed to happen was I was supposed to take over my father's business, right? And then that didn't happen. I think a big part of why it didn't happen was I wasn't really, even though I knew I wasn't really that interested in it, I basically went in that direction and then realized this isn't going to work. It's not going to work because of how much I'm not interested in what I'm doing, but it's also not going to work because my father's not that interested in what I'm doing, right? And you can kind of blame your father, or you can blame yourself, or you can say it's just life. Sometimes things don't work out. But I think there is a tendency to blame someone else and not just take responsibility and just say, look, go on, try again, try something else kind of thing. I think the same can happen where in a less direct way, where you looking for a job or you get fired or this happens, and then to blame something, and it might not be that thing. It might not be racism. It might not be anything specific. It's just life that's happening. And I think racism has become this credit card where when things don't go your way, it's because of racism. And I kind of got that sense a little bit. I could be totally off here. I could be totally wrong, but I got that sense a little bit with Harry and Meghan is I didn't get what I want. It must be racism. I wanted this to happen. It didn't happen. It must be racism. Again, I'm not saying racism is irrelevant. Racism does exist. I just don't know if it's the only factor here, right? Flame Lily, thank you very much for your contribution. The impression I got, and I could be wrong, this is taking it quite far, is I kind of got the sense where they spoke about the security that perhaps the royal family, maybe they were trying to hold a carrot, or they were trying to sort of negotiate. And so there was this thing where, well, we're not going to give you this, or we're not going to give you that, and we need you to play ball. And then if you behave properly, if you stay in our good graces, we will give you that thing that you want, if you know what I mean. But then there was a quick reaction and then just throwing it all away. Do you know what I mean? In general, I do think you shouldn't air your you shouldn't air your dirty laundry in public. And I think, is it helpful if you're not getting along with your dad, you're not getting along with your brother, you've sort of left the family to then go and tell the world about it and put pressure on them? Is that going to help those relations? Aren't those relations going to get worse? On the other hand, if you can do it in a measured way, in a way that you're not pointing fingers. Jay says, white people should not limit minorities with stereotypes. Well, that's fair. I don't think I'm the first person to say stereotypes aren't helpful. Like in true crime all the time, I'm saying don't label a person. As soon as you label a person, you reduce a person. And obviously that is almost essentially what racism is. It's giving a person a label, whatever they are, whatever they look like they are, kind of thing. I think part of why Diana means quite a lot to me. Annie Thomas, thanks a lot. You're amazing. Thanks a lot. I think quite a big reason of why Diana meant quite a lot to me is she meant a lot to my mother. I think my mother was also, in a weird way. Please watch chat, Queen Moon. I had no chance in life because I'm of color. Okay. So I just want to respond to that, Mandy. And I'm giving you the South African scenario of this, right? So I don't really want to talk about this so much because it's not, I want to talk about true crime in the same way I don't want to talk about other channels. But I just want to address Mandy, who says, I had no chance in life because I'm of color. Now, when I say this, I want to give you a sense of hope. I'm not saying it for any other reason. So in South Africa, I became an adult in South Africa at the very time that South Africa became a democracy, and then affirmative action came about. And so as soon as I was sort of educated and ready to get a job, South Africa basically decided we want to redress the problems of the past, and we're going to basically give jobs to non-white people. And I didn't really have a problem with that, except that I couldn't get a job. Not just I couldn't get a job, I eventually had to leave the country to get a job. And where did I go? I went to the UK. I went to the UK for about 2 to 3 years. And I was amazed how easy it was to find a job. I mean, it was impossible to find a job here, and it was ridiculously easy to find a job there. Then I came back to South Africa, was faced with the same problem again. By now, I was being told I was overqualified. Then I went to South Korea, and it was, again, ridiculously easy to find a job there, to make a living there. So I was making a living not in my own country because of my skin. Anyway, the weird thing was I really missed South Africa. I missed the climate. I missed the country. I missed the food. I just missed, it's difficult to put your finger on it, the clean air, the sunshine. So when I came back to South Africa, it was like, well, I don't know how you're going to make a living, but I can't stay in this other country. And I ended up just kind of working really, really, really hard. And I won't go through the whole story, but I ultimately became self-employed. I've written 100 books, and my life is sort of, what do you say? Thanks for being you. Thanks a lot. But I'm just saying that instead of it being because of this or it's someone's fault, you can take responsibility for your life, and it's no one's fault, and it's no one's responsibility to do this for you, do that. You can reinvent yourself. You can make your life what you want it to be. You can imagine your own story, and you can do it at any time. And as soon as you caught up in that thing of, well, it's because of racism, or it's because of my dad, or it's because of that, you're stuck in, I'm not going to do anything, someone else must do anything to save me. And so it was a big moment when I actually went to a life coach, and he said, you can validate yourself. You don't need someone to say, well, I'm not a racist, or I'm going to give you this opportunity. And a big part of that, I remember, was, I was writing books and looking for publishers, and I was waiting for a publisher to embrace me and say, we're going to pay you $1 million or whatever. We think you're awesome. I was waiting for that moment, and it wasn't happening. So do you wait your whole life for someone to say, welcome, I see you're important? I think you need to start that yourself. You need to validate yourself first. You need to give yourself that permission, right? Do you follow what I'm saying? In other words, you need to be your own savior, not the world needs to change and accept you and then everything will be fine. You need to be your own savior, and then you can also be a stronger person and also be able to save other people. Look at Oprah's story. I mean, Oprah's story is incredible. And Oprah invented herself, despite her background, despite her trauma, despite her poverty. So it is possible. So one thing that I thought was a sad moment, nevertheless an authentic moment, but it really touched me. I don't know if it touched you guys, was where Harry admitted he was too ashamed to tell anyone. So when Meghan said to him, I don't want to be alive anymore, I've got these horrible thoughts, he said he was too ashamed to tell anyone. And I found that kind of weak. I mean, I looked at it and I thought, cheapers, but, you know, obviously you're not in that situation. You're not in that situation where he knows or he thinks he knows how his family will respond. But I did think she was kind of trapped in a situation where she's now feeling a certain way, and the one person who can really help her, the person who's connected to his own family, doesn't make that connection. And so that is how they're stuck. And I just found that weak. I'm not saying, I don't judge that, because there have been times that I guess I could have said things and I didn't. I'll give you a silly example. One time I was in a part of a swimming club, and the Olympian Christina Egersecki came to coach us, give us style correction. And I had a terrible, I think I still do, I had a terrible sort of lopsided stroke where my one leg would sort of kick in a weird way. And although I think if anyone, I needed stroke correction, I just couldn't bring myself to swim and have them assess me. And every moment that it was sort of my turn, because you had all these swimmers going down and then they'd say this or say that, I would just take a step back and another swimmer would take my place. And I remember thinking in that moment, you're going to remember this and you're going to regret this. And still thinking, I just can't do it. I mean, and then I just never did it. I never did it, and the moment passed. And I remember just thinking how weak and horrible, and I felt ashamed to myself, but I also felt, wow, that happened. That just happened. So I'm saying that just to say that I can understand that cowardice does happen at times where we know we should act, but we don't because of something. And I guess my thing was, I'd swum this way for so long that even if you said to me, just do that, I wouldn't really know how to correct it. Do you know what I mean? But I still feel upset with myself that I just didn't say, to hell with it, do it, kind of thing. So when Harry says, you know, he was too ashamed to tell anyone, I felt like, wow, dude, you dropped the ball there. So, you know, in my situation with Christina Egersecki, I lost out. But in a situation where you've got a wife who's in this, and it's kind of like not life and death, but it's quite a critical scenario, then that shame has a possible consequence. And I think when that happens, then that's really difficult. And I don't know, anyway, when Harry said that, I just thought, dude, you dropped the ball there. You should have, to help her, you should have just spoken to someone. How easy could it be? For some reason, my chat's not updating. See if I can just refresh here. So guys, in the comments, try and keep it civil. Wendy says sending everyone love and hugs. Billy No Mate says, are men allowed to talk about sensitive issues? Slow chat. I'm not quite sure how to activate slow chat when you're in it. But anyway. So what did I write here? This is not... that was something I thought was quite funny, where Harry said, this is not going to end well. It sounded to me like a Star Wars quote. It sounded like something that Luke Skywalker said to Rey. And I kind of got the sense that Harry, saying something like that, Harry maybe doesn't have enough life experience. I don't know. It could be a little bit, judgmental of me to say that, but thinking of a Hollywood saying to address your life, I don't know if that is very helpful. And for him to say this is not going to end well, but he doesn't want to talk to his own family about his wife. I don't know. I found it very sad, but also found it happens. It definitely happens. I could tell you certain things about my life and my family, but I don't really want to make it about me, but I can definitely sympathize with the situation. But you do wish, it's a simple thing. Can't you just talk to someone about this? And you never know, they might respond in a way, if it's family, in a way that you don't expect, because it's quite an important issue. So, yeah, someone says teenagers do this, yeah. 21, I could probably slow down chat, but I think it would take 2-3 minutes to go into it and do it. And I just want to kind of get through this. We had an hour and 22 minutes. I really want to get on to Chris Watts and some other things. Point number 21, this is just the last page. The institution survives based on that perception. I found that an incredible statement. I mean, it's true, but it's also something to hear it from the inside. And within the context of true crime, the way we've been talking about it, I just found it quite a kind of a validation of what I've been talking about for quite a long time. That, do you remember the Watts marriage? And think about the Watts marriage and those words. The institution survives based on that perception. Think about multi-level marketing. The institution survives based on that perception. Think about so many things where that's the case. It survives on a perception, whether it's a brand, whether it is a politician or a political party, whether it is a president. In this case, it's the royal family survives based on perception. And who shapes that perception? The media. And you need to ingratiate yourself with the media in the same way that Shanann needed to ingratiate herself with Facebook flock to foster that perception. And that's all it is, it's a perception. One thing that's really stood out to me, it's point number 22 here, is that the tabloids would hold holiday parties at the palace. I never knew they were that ensconced in the whole mechanism. I'm not surprised in a way, but I never knew it was to that extent, that tabloid journalists would have holiday parties at the palace. And you really get the sense that you live or die, where they say you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Well, the tabloid journalists really make or break the royals, kind of thing. And so if you don't get your little perk, then you're on the warpath, kind of thing, which I think makes them a capricious bunch. I think it makes them shallow and greedy and whatever. And I think it turns everyone into shallow and greedy people, right? but it ends up being about the price of keeping up appearances. There is a price in keeping up appearances. If you make an appearance, I think there was a big brouhaha about, it was like tradition that when a royal gives birth to a child, that you have this moment where they present their child to the media, and then the media have their buffet, they have their feast, and the media make a lot of money out of that, and that is sort of something that is done for the media, right? And so when they didn't do that, they felt really done in, and then perhaps that's part of where the vendetta came from. What I find quite interesting is that Oprah seems to understand that system. Oprah has successfully become a master, I think, of that system. So has Dr. Phil. And what's my point here? I guess my point is just that there's a price in keeping up these appearances. And the price is when you don't keep up the appearances anymore, then you run foul of the tabloids. You earn their ire, kind of thing. Something else that just struck me that I don't think is so surprising, but it is quite sad, is from Harry and from Meghan actually, you got a sense of broken relationships. Meghan doesn't speak to her father. Harry doesn't speak to his brother, or things aren't that great with his brother. His father hasn't been taking his calls, although it sounds like he might be. I must say, this is just my opinion, but Prince Charles is not my favorite royal. I didn't really like the way he treated Diana. I didn't like what happened to Diana, and there was something so heartbreaking about Charles going to fetch Diana's remains. I don't know, I just found it a horrible irony, all of that. Just seems really unfair. But there's so many broken relationships, and I think that is the source of all of this, the broken relationships. I think those need to be fixed, and I think if the royal family don't fix their relationships with each other, I don't know if the tabloids can sticky tape the pageantry together. I think what is happening with Meghan and Harry could be the clock might have started ticking on the end of the royal family. And I think if the royals want their thing to carry on, it's got to continue to be a family, doesn't it? Annie Thomas says you can't hide dysfunction. Well, you can, just not forever. I wonder if Meghan referred to Prince Andrew when she said they lied to protect someone. That's a great point. Jessie, Meghan was like a wrecking ball to the royal family. Did she do the actual wrecking, or did she just exacerbate the problems already present? I don't know. I would say the latter, that she did exacerbate the problems. But I think they're at the point now where they don't really mind, because they're no longer part of the system. I don't think, and they don't have anything to lose. I don't think they mind launching a couple of, shots over the bow. Angel 5555, good to see you. Oh my God, late again. Like hearing about the royals. Well, we're almost done here. In fact, I'm at the last point. I can't actually read my own handwriting. So it was quite interesting, also quite ironic given the subject matter of the Watts case, where Meghan, I can't remember if it was Meghan or Harry, said, we're not just surviving, we're thriving. It was quite just weird hearing those words, given what we've seen in the Watts case and associated with the word thrive. where the word itself, thrive, just seems to be meaningless. But I do get the sense that they are, I wouldn't actually say thriving. I don't know if you can thrive with that much family dysfunction. I think they're doing well. That's how I would put it. Mandy says, take your time. Don't worry about those demanding you talk about the watch case. You're doing lovely. Okay, thanks a lot, Mandy. It has slowed down here a little, so that's fine. So I kind of thought good for them towards the end. So in the beginning, like I said, I didn't really feel like I connected with Meghan. I did feel when they were in the chicken coop, I suddenly saw her in a different way. I thought she was pretty cool. I thought she was, I don't know, how can I put it? In the interview, she seemed quite stuck and quite like a cardboard figure, but she seemed to come to life inside that chicken coop. And and part of it was her just laughing about, her direction focused away from a camera straight on her. And I just ended up thinking good for them, good for them that they've gotten out of it. I think there's a little bit of wounding that is there, but I also I genuinely think good for them, and I can identify with it a little bit because in a weird way, I felt like I was under the shadow of my own family for a while. And when I took charge of my own identity and became a writer and went my own way, and I didn't need anything, and I didn't want anything, and I just became a self-starter. Good for me, and it's good for anyone who basically says, look, this isn't really working out. I'm going to take an adult decision. I'm going to take an executive decision, and I'm going to do what I think is the right thing. And maybe I'm going to make a mistake, but I can't carry on doing that I know is not working out, right? So I do think how's that? Muffy Dragon Slayer. I don't really care what Nick talks about. I just want to listen to his voice. Okay. Jen H, that's awesome. Okay, thanks a lot, guys. And I kind of feel the same way about those friends of mine that met Harry in Lesotho. I've kind of known them quite a long time, barbecued with them quite a lot. I was at their wedding. They're kind of my age, but anyway, when they left South Africa for Wales, I still said to them, look, go to, if you're going to go to England, but go in the summer. In other words, go now. But they basically went before Christmas, and I said, well, do you want 2 winters back to back? But they couldn't wait to leave South Africa, actually. They've got a young 2-year-old boy. It's a situation a little bit similar to Meghan and Harry, but a situation of they're older, but a similar situation of just having had a child, and they just didn't feel this was the right place to bring up their child. And I must have felt, in terms of them, good for them. And they've sent me photos of their home in Wales and the forests around. And, I hate to say it, but it really does look magical. I mean, I'm sure it's not a fairy tale, but it certainly is. They've found a wonderful place for themselves. But having said that, they went to England before the corona went the way it did there. And so things are quite hectic in that area, in terms of corona in England. So, whereas in South Africa, it seems as though it's not so bad, although one wonders whether you can rely on the stats. Okay, so I think I've concluded the thing on the royals. And as I say, my conclusion was good for them. I thought that they made the right decision and so on. Does anyone have any questions before we move on to Chris Watts? Gary from Blackpool says the French had the right idea. Robin says, I love Wales, can't wait to see the sea. someone said, I just missed it, but someone said the royals called their chore an issue. 12-step woman, I've said that before, his voice is relaxing. Okay. Yeah, I think some people use me as ASMR. I guess to each his own. So a couple of things I want to highlight from Chris Watts. There's a comment I got just the other day there are not too many men involved in the true Chris Watts case, but this one came from John Degener, and he was saying, I was wondering why he didn't back his truck all the way in the garage if he was loading Shanann. He had 3 garages. And I think that is a really, it's a kind of an obvious question, but I think it's quite a good point. If you think about it, whether you've got one body or 3 bodies that you want to load into your vehicle, as a criminal, we're going into the criminal psychology. Why wouldn't you? Yeah, but Susie, don't you think at least one body was loaded? Anyway, the point is, Chris Watts backs his truck, and then you see him running around on the CCTV, right? So, Queen Moon. Okay, well, I'm not going to repeat what you're saying there, but so that's a good point. Shanann's car was in the garage, but it is a 3-car garage, and what Watts could have done, bear in mind it's a premeditated crime, what he could have done is parked her car to the one side. Bear in mind that he came back from the birthday party driving the Lexus on the Sunday. So he could have made space in that sense. The other, I think that there are two or three elements just to mention is, first of all, it wasn't just the car in the garage, it was quite cluttered. So there was some stuff on the sides of the wall on the left side of Shanann's car, and there was some stuff on the right side, basically filling up the third bay, right? But he could have theoretically cleaned that all away so that he could back his truck in. The other thing is, he couldn't back his truck in the whole way. That the truck was, I think, too long to actually fit inside the driveway. I think the recovering Hunbot is here. Someone says, I love your work. So good to have you here. She says, I've always found it so odd to have a 3-car garage and only the Lexus parked inside of it. Well, the reason for that is Shanann didn't like the garage door opening because it was directly below the girls' rooms and would wake them up. And I think the other reason was she didn't want oil stains on the driveway. I must say, if I lived in a situation like that, if I was married to someone, I mean, I'm not a motorhead or a petrol head, but if I was married to someone who said, okay, well, my car's going to be in the garage, but your car is just never going to be in the garage, I would kind of have a problem with that, I think. I don't know about you guys. Chris McManus says, what's the relevance of him backing up all the way or not? I'll tell you what it is. If he could have backed all the way in, then there would be no CCTV footage. The only CCTV footage there would be of him backing in, right? You'd not see him going in and out so many times, right? Of course, you could also argue that it would be more suspicious if he backed all the way in. Why would you need to do that? And, so there are quite a few factors to look at there. I'm just saying, if you think of it at the level of carrying a body and you're actually going to carry it partially outside onto the driveway, when you could have backed your car into the garage and done it inside the garage, it seems kind of crazy that Chris Watts didn't do that. Jay Fraser says it was easier to contain the kids in the closed garage before belting them in. Yeah. Jay, if you don't mind, if you can take off the caps lock, I'd appreciate it. Okay, so Anne Westwood says, heartbroken for Sarah Everard's family and friends. Justice will be done. Maybe it's time to talk about that. I think there's just something else I wanted to talk about with Chris Watts. he's lawyering up now. But to me, the fact that he hasn't, that the lawyers haven't actually addressed the media or said anything or made a statement is, he's lawyered up. But what has happened? What's the result of that? If you look at the Laurie Vallow case, how much is going on there? Just constant motions about everything. Those are that's paid legal counsel doing their job. Well, what is Chris Watts' legal team doing? What statements are they making? What motions are they filing? So far, nothing. Something I do want to talk about, I don't think there's really going to be time here or now, is I want to talk about Nicole Atkinson, the author of the book Girl, Wash Your Face. So that's the book that Nicole Atkinson was reading. And I want to ask you guys this question here, just to test your knowledge. How well do you know the Chris Watts case? How many Hold Me Tight books are there in the story, right? So you know that Shanann ordered the book Hold Me Tight for Chris Watts. How many books are there in the story? Something else that I think I didn't mention it in my video about where did the crime scene happen, is Chris Watts. I've just now had another idea that I'm trying to just put on the back burner, but maybe I need to address that idea quickly. I've got an idea that the crime scene could also be somewhere else. I'll tell you how that thinking works. If you assume that Shanann is a creature of habit, and she is, and you assume that when she would arrive home from the airport from a trip and go do whatever, go straight upstairs, put the children to bed, take a shower, whatever her routine was, then it makes sense to say, well, the crime could have happened in the bedroom or on the stairs, right? But if you assume that her routine starts off with putting her handbag in her office, that's her first stop, then I think you can make a very, Mary Rose says everyone is a creature of habit. I think that's true, but I think some people are far more habitual than others. Some people have kind of rituals. My brother's one of them. If there's a race that's going to happen, he's got to eat this kind of bar and he's got to eat that meal before the time, and it's very almost OCD, but some people are definitely more OCD than others. Girl, Wash Your Face, that was the book that Nicole Atkinson was reading. I want to talk about the author of that book, and as a kind of a parallel universe to Shanann Watts. So the fact that Nicole Atkinson was reading this book, given what happened to Shanann, and I just think there's an irony in that the author was also doing the thing of how she's thriving, although not necessarily on Thrive, but how she's giving marriage counseling as an influencer, and then in the middle of, she was actually getting divorced. And that whole thing. It's just something I want to talk to you guys about. Her name's Rachel Hollis. So if Shanann would come home from the airport and go straight to the office to leave her handbag there, and that would make sense because that's where all her handbags were. And this came up when I did that last video about the handbag. It made me think, didn't Shanann put her handbag there? I'd always thought that Chris Watts had put her handbag in the office, but wouldn't it have made sense that Shanann would put her handbag there because that's where she kept her handbags? Would it make sense that Shanann would take her handbag upstairs, given what was in her handbag? I can't really answer that. I mean, I think it would depend on you. For the women that are out there, what do you think? Do you think Shanann would take, this is at 2:00 in the morning, do you think Shanann would take her handbag to her office and then take out, I guess, her charger cable or something? Maybe not necessarily, she might have it in her bedroom anyway. But given that she was quite weighed down, wouldn't she drop her suitcase at the stairs, go around the corner, and drop her handbag in the office? And I'm just saying, if that's the case, couldn't she have been attacked in that labyrinth part of the house? Because that's a part of the house that's it's like there are a lot of tunnels and it's quite dark. And it's very close to the garage, the entrance of the basement. There's also a bathroom there. I'm just saying, I don't know whether Shanann's parents know the answer to this, but if they do, did Shanann if she came home, would she first thing go to the office and put her handbag there? If that's the case, then I think the crime may well have happened in that area of those passages, because you'd have the same situation of sound insulation, a soft substrate, and Watts being able to hide from her until the last moment. So that's just something I wanted for you guys to think about. And then the question is, where would Watts be hiding? Well, there are quite a few places that he could hide in those passageways. He could just hide around the corner. Would he have stood somewhere on the basement stairs? I don't think so, because I think those basement stairs are made of wood. I've heard people coming up those stairs and you can hear the stomp, stomp, stomp. So I don't think he would have been in there. But he could easily have just been around the corner, out of line of sight, in the same way that I said he could have been standing behind the pillar. Just something that I thought about after doing the handbag video. I don't know what you guys think of that. Something else, just coming back to the royals, where John Oliver, did you guys see that? John Oliver said, it's weird to kneel in front of another adult. In his criticism, he's a Brit and he's married to an American. That was his assessment of the royals. I've got to say, I agree with that. It's weird to kneel in front of another adult, and that's what you must do, curtsying and all that kind of thing. Just to touch on that again, I like Britain's medieval history. I've even written a book about it called Bloodline, and I've loved The Last Kingdom, that series, but I don't see any of that when I see the royals. I don't know about you guys. So I want to talk about Sarah Everard. I don't know if there's going to be time to talk about Laurie Vallow, but we've got a couple of minutes left. Let me just look at your comments here. Nick, when COVID is over, will you be doing lecture tours? I was planning on coming over to America before COVID hit. So I do plan on, doing trips when COVID is over. Mo Bean says, what a genius John Oliver is with that comment. Yeah. The Vallow case is a wild ride. I don't know if we're going to get to the Vallow case, but something I just want to quickly say about the Vallow case before we get to Sarah Everard. And just apologies for misspelling her name in this title. Something that we were talking about on Patreon is just that I don't think the prosecution or the defense are going to draw attention to her religious beliefs or Chad's religious beliefs, because it's like a loaded gun. It's also like talking about racism. You've got to be very, very careful. You're going to alienate the jury. So what I can anticipate happening is when the prosecution interview their own witnesses, then they're not going to talk really about religion, but when there's a witness for the defense, they might bring it up. But, the cult aspect or whatever. But I don't get the feeling that the defense or the prosecution are going to go there. Now, as a lawyer, I think that's sound, but as a true crime writer and as a narrator and as someone who does this for a living, I obviously think that the dogma, the beliefs are the reason why this crime happened. So to not talk about it for me is a bit of a cop-out, but legally speaking, I can see how you can alienate your audience by doing that. But does that make sense? We'll see if that does happen. So far, that is what has happened in I think it was the preliminary hearing when Melanie Gibbs spoke and so on. You didn't really hear them talking about that. And I was like, wow, are you not going to talk about the elephant in the room kind of thing? Florida bass fishing. It's sad. I'm not being disrespectful. I think Shanann was moved out back. Okay. Not America. So someone says, License to Dance says, if the murder happened in the office, is that why the office was a mess? No, I don't think so. I don't think the murder did happen in the office. It's quite a good argument. You could say maybe that is why it happened. I would have imagined it would have happened in the passageway. The only reason I'm not convinced of that is if you imagine a surprise attack in the home, if Chris Watts makes a mistake and he trips or he doesn't quite grab Shanann properly, then she can run away. Whereas on a stair, she's trapped. It's difficult to run away in that sense. So someone said, I don't believe he dragged her down any stairs. Okay, so Sarah Everard, 33-year-old marketing executive, she's become the symbol of silenced women everywhere. And I can tell you that I've sort of had an experience of this with Reva Steenkamp, a victim whose story was silenced in court, where Oscar took her voice away, even where he said Reva didn't scream as she was dying, even though 5 eyewitnesses heard a woman screaming. Oscar said, no, that was me. And we eviscerated her from the whole story. I didn't even know it was her. I thought it was a burglar. But not only that, just through the whole thing, it was all about Oscar, right? And so I get a sense of that with Sarah Everard, where she's now the symbol of an innocent woman being victimized by authority, right? And she's become quite a big, they're massively connecting. Okay, there we go. I just want to quickly say something. Some of those pictures of Sarah Everard and the flowers, do you know, I was in England, as I say, when Diana died, and I'll never forget this, going to Kensington Palace just to pay my respects. I actually always wanted to see Diana, you know, in person. When I say in person, just like driving in the car by or whatever and just waving, whatever. I thought I would do that while I was in the UK, and didn't happen. But I went to pay my respects at Kensington Palace with my girlfriend, and I'll never forget, long before we got there, the smell of thousands of roses going into my nostrils. The wind would turn slightly, and didn't she die in June in the middle of summer? And there was like a subtle shift in the wind, and suddenly all of those roses, all of the scent of all of those roses just turned. Quite an incredible moment. But so Sarah Everard, there's just been this outpouring of grief, compassion for her. It's been weird reading about her and, you know, the way that her body was found. And then I've been covering the Ripper on Patreon. It's just been weird thinking about what happened to Sarah and the Ripper thing. So I was saying in the video that I'm going to talk about why I think this happened. 31st of August, 1997, okay. Well, so that was shortly after a couple of months after John Bonet died. So so I think what I want to say is the first thing that stood out. So I haven't studied the Sarah Everard case in a lot of detail. So what I'm going to do now is what I call thin slicing. it's dangerous to do because there could be contextual things that you're just not aware of. But I'm also saying that you can sometimes do it and be accurate. Time will tell. So this is my assessments. Basically, what I noticed first of all is that Wayne Couzens is 48 years old and Sarah Everard is 33 years old. There's quite a big age gap there. I'm not 100% sure what the age is of Wayne Couzens' wife, but I get the sense there's a similar, fairly big gap, 10, 12 years, whatever it is. But the impression I got was, and I'm sorry if it sounds shallow, but I sort of looked at Wayne Couzens and I thought, wow, it's like he hit every branch of the ugly tree falling down. I just got the sense that he's not a very good-looking guy, and I think that was an issue. I think that was an issue for him. I think, bear in mind, I'm 49 years old, he's 48 years old, and I just kind of got the sense that from how his unusual attempt to get married, he seemed to have married a mail order bride from the Ukraine. I kind of got the impression that his appearance has counted against him. And as a result of that, he's a frustrated fellow. In the Ripper's case, I don't know if Peter Sutcliffe was good looking, but I think what counted against him was his personality. I think he had issues, but I think he also had a weak personality. If you hear his voice, he's got a very weak voice, Peter Sutcliffe. So I think that and his own self-image counted against him. So he wants a certain kind of experience with people, but especially with the opposite sex. I kind of get the same. Someone said Diana had a good heart. I agree with you. Okay, I'm not going to repeat those comments, but the point is, I get the impression that this guy was pretty down on his luck and was becoming frustrated to the extent that he eventually had to kind of find a Ukrainian to marry, a mail order bride. And there's someone not far away from me who is from Russia, and she walks her dog and so on, and she can speak English very well, and she's educated, and she's from Russia, but she's not a mail order bride. She's someone who's educated, and she met her. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about that, but the point is, this guy met someone who he couldn't even talk to. She couldn't talk to him. So it was basically just putting a face next to his face. Well, I'm married now with a person who's, whatever. So then they had 2 children, but I get the feeling that this sense of frustration, like, I want this kind of experience with the opposite sex, and now I'm married and I've got the family and I've got the role, just as the Ripper did. The Ripper, did the Ripper have children? I don't know if he did, but he was married, but that ended up not being good enough or not satisfying for him. Now, in that area, I wouldn't be surprised if there's pornography involved, that there was a fantasy element that, if you get a mail order bride, you go online to get a mail order bride. I wouldn't be surprised if part of his online activity was pornography, and part of the pornography might have been younger women. And so when Sarah Everard crossed his path, that wasn't the first time that he'd thought about that. So what I'm trying to say is, it wasn't as though, I'm speculating, of course, I'm just saying, I don't think Wayne Couzens was driving around, and when Sarah Everard crossed his path, that's the first time he'd ever thought about what he's going to do. I think he thought about it before. He may have fantasized about it, but I do think it was an issue. I think the science showed it was an issue. I think there's a reason that she was that she was the age that she was, and I think he'd been fantasizing about it for some time, and I think, bear in mind, this wasn't just an opportunistic attack in a park and then he left her there. This was something that appears to be premeditated in the sense that he abducts her, transports her somewhere else, and then disposes of her body. So I talk about post-meditation. Post-meditation is that whole thing of after you've gotten hold of the victim, what do you do after that? Now, if there's a cover-up, then it either shows that there were extenuating circumstances, as in the Ramsey case, leading up to it, or premeditation. So there's a link, there's a mirror between premeditation and post-meditation, okay? So in this case, I think it was premeditated. And so I'm not saying that he stalked Sarah Everard before that. I'm saying he, like the Ripper, he wanted to attack someone. He didn't know who it was going to be, but he had that thought in him. He may have had that thought in him a few times and he didn't do anything, but on this occasion he did. To me is getting very antsy. I think we're at the 2-hour mark, so I do think we need to wrap up. But that is basically why I think the crime happened, is basically sexual frustration from this older guy who's struggling to sort of resign himself to his humdrum, the humdrum of his marriage, the humdrum of his life. And he, like the Ripper, I think he has a sense of that his life is dull and that he wants to get that sense of being alive and of being a man through a woman. And so that is part of the motive. It's a similar motive to the Ripper. What we don't know here, of course, is from the autopsy evidence, but the fact that the remains seem to have been destroyed in some way. I don't know if they were burnt or what, but she was recognized by dental records. I think that suggests sadism. And where you see sadism, there's humiliation. And I get the sense you have the same thing with the Ripper as with this guy, that he came from quite a simple background. You know, he was, some of the positions he had in life, which I mentioned in a previous video, are, he's only recently come into a position of quite a respectable job, if I can put it that way. And I think that's something that bothered him, his station in life. It's also possibly why he needed to get a mail order bride, because I lived in England for a while, and, you know, I think at certain times I worked as a kitchen porter, and while I did, British girls didn't pay too much attention to me, because what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a kitchen porter. Obviously, I did other jobs after that. I went through call centers and I worked for Summerfield, and some of them were not too bad positions. But I did get the sense when I was in England that people sort of, they want to know how much money you have, kind of thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was something that affected his status, and that was very frustrating for him. And so I think that frustration eventually manifested in this crime. Sexual frustration, but also frustration in terms of his status as a man. But what I think is going on here, so if it wasn't a police officer that killed Sarah Everard, if it was a street person, or I think if it was an immigrant, you could have had the same thing. But I think the fact that a police officer did this is what is creating this resonance with people, that we can't trust those who are supposed to protect us. I don't know if it's necessarily applicable because of that, but I think that feeling is there, and so she's become a symbol for that. Love his eyebrows. Are you talking about Timmy, right? Okay, so I think that's about it. Stephanie says, "You're welcome. Thanks for your support." Tammy says, "Sometimes plumbers make more yearly than a certain type of doctor." Good point. Leslie says, "True crime often or mostly centers and focuses on the murderer's narrative, and we hear very little about the victim or their family. The detectives become the heroes." I try and give the victims a voice. I really do want to do a video on Sarah, but I must say I don't have a lot of information about her at this point. Did she have a Facebook profile? Something that I want to talk about, but I just feel a bit reluctant to do, is there's been some talk about Wayne Cousins' wife, but I'm not going to talk about that here just because I think I need to know more about everything. Nick, have you seen The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel? Lisa Lam, Canadian girl, vanishes. Would you consider talking about this Netflix program? Thanks, Annie. I haven't seen it. I will look at it and then I will talk about it once I've seen it. Firefly, thanks very much. Don't forget to hit the like. Okay, guys, it's 2 hours and 6 minutes. I think this is the longest live thus far. I'm going to say good night. Timmy is also going to say good night. Timmy? Okay, guys, good to see you. If you've got any ideas for next week, I might carry on with the Sarah Everard case and possibly also Laurie Vallow. There's quite a lot to talk about there. Unfortunately, we didn't really get round to it. Okay, guys, thanks very much. Stay safe wherever you are, and see you guys soon. Cheers.